210 horsepower, 7.2 seconds to 60. These aren't stats from a Mustang or Camaro. They belong to a Chevy family sedan from 1991. And the craziest part? It could outhandle a BMW that cost $7,000 more. This is the story of the Chevrolet Lumina Z34, the performance sedan that nobody saw coming. When most people think of 90s performance cars, they picture Mustangs and Camaros. But in 1991, Chevy was quietly selling a family sedan that could go 0 to 60 in 7.2 seconds, faster than a BMW 325i of the same year. This wasn't a small sports car or a muscle car. It was a front-wheel drive family sedan with a unique high-revving V6 that few people remember today. The Chevrolet Lumina Z34 wasn't just quick in a straight line. It could pull 0.84 G on the skid pad, matching numbers from cars costing twice as much. But what made this sleeper even more impressive was that underneath its hood sat one of the most unusual V6 engines ever put in an American car. The early 90s weren't great for American car companies. Japanese brands like Honda and Toyota were taking over the family car market with their reliable, fuel-efficient sedans. The Ford Taurus had some success, but Chevrolet was struggling to keep up. Their answer was the Lumina, a car that looked like it was designed to blend in with every other sedan on the road. But GM had a secret weapon, the LQ1 V6 engine. This wasn't your typical American V6. While most V6 engines of the time used push rods and a single camshaft, the LQ1 had 4 camshafts and 24 valves. It could rev to 7,000 RPM, something unheard of for an American V6 in 1991. The engine made 210 horsepower and 215 pound-feet of torque, numbers that don't sound huge today, but were seriously impressive for a family sedan in 1991. GM didn't just stop with the engine. They gave the Z34 package a Getrag 5-speed manual transmission, the same company that made gearboxes for BMW and Mercedes. The suspension was completely redone with stiffer springs, thicker sway bars, and special FE3 sport tuning that made the car handle more like a European sport sedan than a typical American family car. They even added 4-wheel disc brakes, which weren't common on American family cars at the time. All this performance hardware came at a price of just $19,495, about $7,000 less than a BMW 325e with similar performance numbers. In the showroom, the Lumina Z34 stood out from regular Luminas with its body-colored grille, 16-inch alloy wheels, and subtle ground effects. But it wasn't just for show. The aerodynamic add-ons actually helped the car cut through the air better at high speeds. Inside, the Z34 got special sport seats with better side bolstering, a leather-wrapped steering wheel, and a unique instrument cluster with a tachometer that redlined at 7,000 RPM. But what really set it apart was how it drove. Car magazines at the time were shocked by how well the Z34 performed. Road and Track tested it against the Taurus SHO, Ford's performance sedan, and found that the Lumina was actually faster around their test track. Motor Trend praised its handling, saying it felt more like a sports car than a family sedan. The Z34 could run the quarter-mile in 15.4 seconds, which was faster than many V8-powered cars of the era. Even more impressive was that it could do this while still getting 25 miles per gallon on the highway and carrying 5 people comfortably. But what made the LQ1 V6 so special wasn't just its power, it was how it made that power. Unlike other American V6s that were designed for low-end torque, the LQ1 loved to rev. The power came on strong at 4,000 RPM and kept pulling all the way to redline. This high-revving character was completely different from what American car buyers were used to. The engine even sounded different. Instead of the typical V6 growl, it had a smooth, almost exotic sound that got louder and more aggressive as the revs climbed. The Z34 wasn't just about straight-line speed. GM engineers spent countless hours tuning the suspension to handle European roads. They tested the car at the Nürburgring, something that was rare for American car companies in the early 90s. The result was a car that could carve through corners with confidence while still being comfortable enough for daily driving. The steering was quick and precise, with a 14.1-to-1 ratio that made the car feel nimble despite its size. The four-wheel disc brakes could stop the car from 60 miles per hour in just 132 feet, a number that was competitive with much more expensive sports cars. The Z34's success story wasn't just about its performance. It was about changing people's minds about what an American family car could be. But GM faced some tough challenges selling it. Most Chevy dealers didn't know how to market a high-performance family sedan. They were used to selling Camaros to performance buyers and regular Luminas to families. The Z34 didn't fit neatly into either category. This meant that many potential buyers never even knew the car existed. Despite this marketing challenge, the Z34 developed a loyal following. Owners loved how the car could keep up with Mustangs and Camaros while still being practical enough for daily use. The Z34 became popular among young families who wanted something fun to drive but couldn't justify a pure sports car. It was especially popular in the Midwest, where its front-wheel drive layout made it more practical in snow than rear-wheel drive performance cars. By 1994, GM made some changes to keep the Z34 competitive. They added a new electronically controlled 4-speed automatic transmission as an option, which helped sales but took away some of the car's sporty character. The automatic-equipped cars were about a second slower to 60 miles per hour, but they still outperformed most family sedans of the time. They also made the FE3 suspension slightly softer after some customers complained about the stiff ride. The Z34 had some quirks that made it interesting to own. The engine required synthetic oil from the factory, something that was rare in 1991. The dual overhead cam design meant timing belt changes were more complex than on typical American V6s, but owners who kept up with maintenance were rewarded with engines that could easily run for 200,000 miles or more. The Getrag transmission was tough but expensive to replace if it broke, leading some owners to joke that Getrag stood for Get Ready and Grab Your Wallet. Production numbers for the Z34 were relatively small. In its best year, 1991, Chevy sold about 10,000 Z34s. By comparison, they sold over 200,000 regular Luminas that same year. This rarity, combined with the car's unique performance characteristics, has made well-preserved Z34s increasingly desirable among collectors who appreciate unusual 90s performance cars. The Lumina Z34's story takes an interesting turn as we look at its impact on GM's future cars. The lessons learned from the Z34's high-revving V6 and sport-tuned suspension would later show up in cars like the Pontiac Grand Prix GTP and the supercharged Buick Regal GS. But perhaps more importantly, it proved that American companies could build family sedans that could compete with European sport sedans, at least in terms of performance. By 1995, sales of the Z34 were declining. SUVs were becoming more popular, and the market for performance sedans was shrinking. The second-generation Lumina Z34, introduced in 1995, lost some of what made the original special. The styling became more conservative, and while the LQ1 V6 remained, it was now focused more on smooth operation than high-performance thrills. Production continued until 1997, when the Z34 package was discontinued, marking the end of one of GM's most interesting experiments. Today, finding a clean Lumina Z34 is becoming increasingly difficult. Many were modified by owners trying to squeeze more performance out of them, and others simply rusted away in Midwest winters. The few original, well-maintained examples that still exist are starting to attract attention from collectors. Prices for clean Z30s have been slowly climbing, especially for rare manual transmission cars from the early production years. The Lumina Z34 represents a unique moment in American car history, when a company known for V8 muscle cars and basic family sedans tried something completely different. It wasn't a huge sales success, and it didn't save GM from their financial problems in the 90s. But it showed what American engineers could do when they thought outside the box. A front-wheel drive family sedan with a high-revving V6 might not have been what people expected from Chevrolet, But for a brief moment in the early 90s, it was exactly what some enthusiasts were looking for. The Z34's legacy lives on not in any direct successor, but in the idea that a family car doesn't have to be boring. Today, when companies like Honda and Hyundai offer high-performance versions of their family sedans, they're following a path that the Lumina Z34 helped pioneer, even if most people have forgotten about this unusual piece of American automotive history. Thank you for watching the hidden story of the Lumina Z34. If you love learning about forgotten performance cars like this one, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Give this video a thumbs up if you'd like to see more stories about unexpected sleeper cars from the 90s. And let me know in the comments, what's your favorite overlooked performance sedan from this era? See you in the next video.